Episode 12, breaking down the basics, PHA noting. We're going to show you some good examples of what to do and what not to do with noting. That's going to include how big you want to make those nodes, if you have any duplicated systems, and if you have any headers. We'll break each one down and highlight in electronic format. And then if you want that material, you can always email us at adam@bearps.com. We'll provide that for you to go over with your team. I want to show a couple examples of what we were talking about with the noting. Here's a good visual on what we're talking about not too big and not too small, kind of what we call the Goldilocks approach. That's why it's just right. This first one you see, we noted the whole system, one node. The purpose of the node is to separate the system in such a way where the team can then efficiently review each area. So if you node the whole system as one big node, you're really not having any benefit there in separating it because you're not separating out the system. It's very hard then for the team to make sure they catch all the causes because within your worksheet, you're going to have a mile-long list of causes. It just kind of becomes difficult to make sure there aren't any gaps and nothing falls through the crack. The second example here is when you're doing too many nodes. You're doing really, really small nodes. Some argue that this is the way to go. You catch all the causes, but from an efficiency standpoint, it's not very efficient in the meeting because you then cover every little system as another node. That's more time within our meeting. Secondly, a negative of this we've seen is that then there's a lot of duplication within the worksheet. So if you ever then change a scenario or a consequence, you have to remember to go back and change it everywhere. Also, when you're having an audit, sometimes, for instance, if you're looking at this, you see reactor 101 is colored yellow. There's really no causes within that system. So then the auditor may come looking in and say, hey, you said here in 101 there were no consequences. There should be consequences for the reactor. Now, the consequences were just in another cause, but because it wasn't readily available and was so split out, sometimes that becomes an issue when we're getting audited or when teams are reviewing it later. Pulling in these nodes maybe for a project, they're going to only just say, I'm just going to pull in the reactor node, and when they pull it in, there's really no causes, there's really no consequences in there. So that's a little bit confusing documentation going forward. So this third one, as you can see, it's sort of the just right approach where you're lumping each piece of equipment or piece of operation together. You have two different feed streams, so you have two different nodes, two different chemicals. That's perfectly adequate. We put the pump system and the reactor system together with that flow control until you get to the tower. Then we've taken the top of the tower, the bottom of the tower, the whole tower system as a whole, and put it together. This really is the most efficient method. It's not too big. You end up catching a lot of the causes. It's the most efficient because while we're talking about the reactor, we go ahead and cover all items about the reactor. We don't have to keep saying, oh, we'll catch that on the next node. We'll catch that on the next node. We can talk about it all at once and that really helps us capture a lot of causes, as we've seen, much easier. So I want to show an example here of duplication and header noting. So this is a good block flow diagram, just very simplified, but color-coded here to show you what we want to do for efficiency purposes when we're noting. You can see the blue node covers the header aspect for the raw material supply to these three different reactor systems. The only thing that's in the line are these manual valves, so it's very easy for us to say manual valve to reactor 1, 2, and 3. Potentially, they're the same consequences, same safeguards, same recommendations necessary for the system. That makes it easy to duplicate. If not, then we just list that out in that node. But basically, we're dealing with one chemical within that whole header node. So that really simplifies what we're doing there. Then you can see with the yellow, the purple, and the green, we've taken identical systems, reactor 1, 2, and 3, and we've noted them identically. What that's going to do is we'll be able to cover reactor 1, all the causes, all the failures and consequences. Then when we get to reactor 2, we just ask the question, what's different? Is there anything different? If there isn't, then we can just cover reactor 2 system by changing the instrumentation and everything that it's dealing with. We go to 3 and we ask the same questions about 3. So that's important. What you want to think about whenever you're noting, you want to think about what is the most efficient for the meeting, what's going to help us on documentation, what's going to help us stay consistent. This scheme right here for headers and for duplication is the way to achieve that goal. Hope you like the content. As always, you can check us out on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, or at our website.